Thank you for joining me today. We're going to paint these flowers in this vase. And we're going to start with the background. I'm starting with the titanium white and the antique gold right here. I'm going to start by putting just the white directly into my onto my canvas. I'm using the bigger brush. It's about a 3/4 inch. This is a filbert, but you may have a 3/4 inch flat. That will work just as well. So we're just getting white onto the canvas, and you might think, why am I putting white on a white canvas? But I'm about to change that by dipping my brush into just a little bit of that antique gold and coming right over that white, and you'll see that you will get a lighter color of the antique gold here. And that's what I was looking for, just to have some color in there of this antique gold. Going back and I'm picking up more white and coming into a different area. I'm doing the background of this, but as I get closer to my flowers, I'm going to leave a little bit of space, and then I'll come back with a smaller brush and fill that in. So right now I'm just filling in all this background on the outside, and again I'm doing it with white, and then I'll pick up just a tiny bit of this antique gold, and that will just make it so much lighter. And I'm not trying to mix it on my plate, I'm letting it mix on the canvas. And the good thing about that is you'll have different tones of this color, some lighter areas and some darker areas, and I think that gives it a very nice look to the background of this painting. And I'm just going on the outsides of the flowers and on the outside of the vase. Again, if with this filbert brush you can't get close to your flowers, or you're afraid to go into your flowers or the leaves here, then you can switch to a smaller brush. I'm going to continue doing the same thing. I picked up more white and I'm putting that into my background here, just white, even though I have not washed my brush out, so it has some of that antique gold in it. Then I'll just pick up a little bit of this antique gold and brush it right into the canvas, right on top of that white. That changes the color, it just makes it light. It'll be lighter in some areas and darker in others, and I am okay with that. Kind of gives it some nice texture looking background. I guess you would say some faux texture. And I just keep picking up white with my dirty brush, and that just gives it a very light golden tone to my background here. I'm just going around, not going to go on the inside of that because I will be making that a darker green. Just going around like that. And then if I need to change to a smaller brush, I can absolutely change to a smaller brush. You may have a small flat. I'm going to do the same thing with this small flat. I'm just going to pick up white and go around the edges of my flowers. And it's okay if I accidentally go into the flower because or the leaves, because it's acrylic paint. And acrylic paint is very, very forgiving. Again, I'm picking up a little bit of that golden color, just coming in right around my flowers. And I'll have more petals and leaves and such coming out here, so it's okay that it's not completely covered up, because we can always put in more petals and more leaves and such around this. Whether you've gotten this from a kit, from one of my kits, and you're painting it in from one of my kits, or you use the tracer and then carbon paper to get it onto your canvas. Either way, we're just working with the design that we have put on our canvas. But you can always add more colors, more flowers, more leaves, and you can always use any of the colors that you want. You do not have to stick to my color palette. All right, and that's all we are going to do for the background. The next step, we're going to put some dark green in here. All right, we finished the background, and when we finish the background, I'm not going to use the big brush anymore, so I put it in my water, rinsed it out, and wiped it on my napkin. You always want to make sure you do that between colors, or if you're not using that brush anymore, because that way it keeps your brush nice and soft. So I'm going to use my smaller brush, this one right here, and I'm going to go in with dark green on the inside around these flowers. This is just going to give it some depth, and this is going to be the inside shadows of the flowers. So we're just going to take the darker green, and I'm using this Hauser dark green. If you did get it in a kit, this is probably the dark green that's in the kit. But if you're just using a tracer, you can use any dark green color you have. Just fill in the spaces in here. We're going to go around our flowers and our petals and our leaves. We're just gonna fill it in. I'm using this smaller brush because smaller space, smaller brush, bigger space, bigger brush. So I'm using this smaller brush since I'm going around these smaller spaces. Now, if you wanted to, you could use a bigger brush in these areas by just turning your brush on its angles this way or that way to get into the smaller areas. Oh, so I'm going to stop right about here on this one because down here is our base. So I'll stop right in there. And I'm just going to continue to fill this in. It is okay if you've accidentally gone into a flower or a petal. Acrylic is forgiving. So we can always cover that up. Just fill in all your little spaces with this dark green. A lot of this color will be covered up when you're continuing the painting. It will be covered. You won't see as much of it. It's just there in case you do see the back shadows of the flowers. So if you do see the shadows of the flowers, then it'll be okay. Also, if you notice, as I'm doing this, I'm doing a thin layer, which means if I see that the painting has collected together, like right in here, and it's thicker, I will come back and smooth it out while it's still wet, just so it will dry quicker. If the layer is thin, it dries quickly, but if the layer is thick and you see a lot of the color pooled together, then it'll take longer for that area or section to dry, even though acrylic does dry rather quickly. I'm just going to come in here and fill these spaces in. I don't know if the video picks up my clock speaking back there. It might pick it up, and that was Bob Ross speaking in the background. That's my talking clock. I'm a Bob Ross fan. And that's okay. So here is layer one of this green, and you can see it's a little transparent. So you can always pause the video right around here and wait for it to dry for a few minutes, and then you will do a second layer on all of this green. You want it to be dry, and look up here where I first started, it's pretty dry. That's how quickly acrylic dries. And the second layer will go much quicker than your first layer. But again, you really want it to be nice and dry before you get on to the second layer. While this green is drying, we're gonna go ahead and do this down here. And we're gonna do this in a dark blue and this part in a light blue. See, my little hiccup right here was because I had white on my brush, so it didn't come out blue when I attempted it. So take two. Let's see. Oh yes, nice and dark. I like this dark color blue right here. So I'm going to go around my flower and up in here. This is the flower pot. I'm using my the smaller brush for this. You can use either one, the smaller or the bigger brush. For this here, I'll show you a little bit. This is my smaller brush, which allows me to come into the sides like so, and I can turn my brush and go back and forth with this one. If I'm using the bigger brush, I can still do that with the big brush, and it covers a lot more of the space. And then I just have to be much more careful when I'm coming down on the edge like so with my bigger brush. So either way is fine. You can use the bigger brush or the smaller one. I'm going to continue in here with my smaller brush so that you can see I'm getting in here around the sides. And I'm brushing kind of side to side is my stroke here, side to side of these strokes. Then I'm going to come in and I'm going to make a lighter blue. I'm using the same blue. My brush has plenty of blue on it. Now I'm going to pick up some titanium white with my dirty brush. See how it's much lighter, but it's still blue. This is what I want, much lighter, but still blue. And I'm going to come in here side to side, just like I was doing the other one. And again, bigger space, bigger brush, smaller space, smaller brush. You can do the same exact thing with a larger brush. I would be coming in here, just being very careful around the edges and just coming in with my larger brush. And if you see, I go all the way to that edge and try to bring that in towards the center when I'm bringing this in. Bringing it in towards the center, just like this. And I can come all the way up here, just bring it. And if you see, it picks up a little bit of that blue because it's so wet. That's okay. This is what I want it to look like. Kind of like in the shadows, and some parts in the shadow and some part of it is not in the shadow. There you go. And that is your base. All right. I'm going to go back into this green here and darken this up a little bit just because I want it to be nice and dark, and it looks like I'm looking in between the flowers into that dark space. So I'm coming back in here with the same dark green and just darkening it up. It's the same dark green, same thing. I'm not too worried about which way my strokes are going. I can go this way or that way. This is kind of foliage in the background, so I'm just putting in a nice dark layer of green. it kind of covers pretty quickly. As the second layer, it does cover faster than the first layer of green. So now that that is drying, I'm going to come down here and do some of the gold. That way the green will be dry. And for this, I'm going to use just that golden color. And I'm going to go back and forth in this golden color right here. I'm going to come up to my horizon line. Going to fill that in. And if you need to go with a smaller brush when you get around your vase, by all means, go in with a smaller brush. Bigger space, bigger brush, smaller space, smaller brush. So for most of this out here, I am just going to go back and forth and fill this in with this nice golden color. It's kind of like a pale wood color. And I'm just going back and forth with this one. You have that 3/4 flat brush, turn it on its angle like this, and it makes a very thin line. Use it this way and you make a broad stroke. So you can do some different brush strokes with the same brush. Once again, if you want to change to a smaller brush to do this, by all means change to a smaller brush. If not, then just turn your brush on its angle. And that might take a little bit of practice, but once you get it, you got it. Then you can use that technique over and over again in all kinds of paintings. Here we go. And while we're doing that, if you're using the canvas from a kit, or if you're using a wrapped canvas like this one, you're going to want to also color in your sides like so. So that way it has a nice finished touch. You're going to want to do this part where down here is in gold or whatever color you've chosen. It's going to be on the sides, and then up here you're going to want to do this background color on the sides. And don't forget to do the bottom. You can put it upside down like this to do the bottom until it dries, and then you can go back to doing another section. So I'm going to start right here with this flower. I'm going to make this part of the flower, the center here, I'm going to use that same gold we've been using, and I'm going to do my center of the flower right in here with this gold color. So I'm just going to go around and fill this little area in with the gold. Then I'm going to take my napkin and I'm going to wipe my brush. I'm not putting it in the water, I'm just wiping it, and I'm going to pick up white paint. And when I pick up the white paint to do these, I'm just going to fill this in right here. But I'm going to come all the way up to this gold color, and you'll see it'll drag some of that color in there. And that's okay to do that. But I want white, try to do a white petal. Now I'm going to try to go all the way on top of any marks that I have made and just do little kind of football shapes with this white paint. And again, if it picks up a little bit of that yellow, it's okay. But I'm going to cover all my pencil marks or any drawing marks that I've done with this white paint. just doing these little footballs shapes for petals. I've got a little petal back here in the back, and then this petal right in here. And again, try to cover all the marks that we've done. And that is our first one. Now we're gonna let that dry. While that one's drying, I'm gonna go around and choose one of my other flowers that are like that. So I'm gonna come in here with the gold again. It's okay, it's kind of thick. I like it like this. I'm gonna wipe my brush. I'm not really washing it, I'm just wiping it. Then I'm gonna pick up titanium white. And once again, fill in my little football shapes. There are so many different ways of creating petals. With a bigger round brush, you can create a petal in one swoop. But for this one, I'm just going to stick with this little brush and fill in these cute football shapes. I'm going to go all the way over my lines, making sure that I'm covering up my lines. And if you're local and you've bought one of my pencil sketched kits, you will see that the pencil will go into your white a little bit and kind of make it gray. That's okay, because that's what's showing me the different petals. So now we have 2 of them done. Gonna continue that. Excuse me. I'm going to continue with this one over here. Again, I'm using the antique gold, and I'm covering all my lines up with that. Then I'm going to wipe my brush on my napkin and use white to create my petal. Just coming in here and making a football shape with my white. This is one that's like in the back. And again, if it's the pencil one and the marks go in, that is okay. I'm going to cover my marks with my paint as I'm coming in and creating these football shaped petals. This is fun. This is what's fun about these petals, is no two have to be exactly alike. They could be different sizes. You can have thicker ones or thinner ones. It's okay. And there we have it. This is our, I'm going to call them daisies, because we have those in there for now. And as a little detail, I might come in and just put a little bit of this golden color around some of my petals, like so, just to give it a little dimension on which petals are where. And this is just tapping in the golden color. So now we're gonna do this one right here and this one right here. I've chosen to do these two in red. So I'm going to pick up my red paint. I use my big brush. I'm actually using a deep burgundy color, but it looks nice and red. And I'm just gonna come in here and create my flower. I'm following these lines that I've created for my flower, and this is the bigger brush. I'm using a wide stroke, and I'm just following my flower around how I want the petals to go. Now you should be directly in front of your canvas when you're doing this. I'm kind of off to the side a little bit so that you can see my hand, but it works nicely if you are directly in front of it. So there's my first one, and we're gonna let that dry before we put in some of the details. I'm gonna come over here and do the same thing for this one. This is again my red one. So you're gonna ask, because people do and ask me all the time, what kind of flowers are these? And my answer is pretty ones, because I'm not, I don't have the knowledge of the types of flowers, the different kinds of flowers. So I just say they're pretty flowers. So these are my two red ones that I've done. Again, you saw how I did that with the big brush. I'm gonna wipe my brush, but I'm not gonna clean it because I'm gonna do these two flowers, and those two are going to be pink. So my brush has already some red on it. And so as I pick up white paint with this red, I'm gonna do the same thing, but now it's gonna be a pink flower. And if that's not pink enough and you want it darker, you just go ahead and pick up a darker color, more red, and it makes it a darker color. I'm just gonna come in here like so, and I'm doing the exact same thing. I'm using a wide brush stroke with my paint, and I'm just gonna come in here, back and forth, and we will put the details in afterwards. So once again, I have barely any red on my brush, and then I'm going to go into the white, and I put it up here. It will be pink. Here we go. And I'm using the broad stroke just to create this. And then it's got to dry before I put in the details. So we're going to put a little bit of details into the flowers, and for that I'm going to use white. And this is my center, so I'm not going to go into my center. I'm going to kind of just go around my center. And there's some strokes that are already on my flowers. When I originally made them, you could see a few of the strokes, brush strokes, the bristles I've made, and you just kind of want to go in and put a little bit of that in there. Not too much, you don't want to overdo it. You just want some details in there. Don't have to be a lot, it could just be a few. Just enough to show that these are petals and flowers. So just enough. Mine was a little bit wet still, so you could still see it in there. In the pink ones, you can do the same thing as well. With just the white, just pick out where your petals are at. Even if you come on the outside of it, that's fine too. I'm actually using this brush right here, which is the small flat brush, but you also, if you have the kit, it should have a small round brush in there, and you can do this one too if you wish. I feel like these might be too thin, but the thicker you push, the thicker the stroke, the line, and the less you push, the thinner the line. So you just create your flowers, and you can do this back and forth as many times as you wish until you are happy with what your flower looks like, how your flower has turned out. We're going to put some leaves that I had already drawn out. You can put as many or as few as you like. And I'm going to use olive green for the leaves. I like this olive green color. So I'm doing kind of like we did with the petals, just these football type shapes. And I'm just filling them in with this olive green color right now. We can always put in highlights and shadows later. Right now, I just want to put in some olive green leaves in here. I think that one's pretty. Just doing these football shapes. If I accidentally cover anything, that's fine. I can go back and fix it. Or I can leave it, and this would be the leaf would be on top of the flower instead of the flower on top of the leaf. Still using the small flat brush just to create these football kind of shapes, elongated ovals. And there is some leaves. And now in all these other areas that we have, we can put in some leaves just randomly anywhere we would want to as little football shapes. Just in here, anywhere we want to, as they're sticking out of this bunch. Just sticking out from behind these flowers. You just put these little shapes anywhere you want. Some can be smaller, some can be bigger. Even down here, we can put some coming out from in the pot, down like so. Maybe another one coming out this way. And you can put as many or as few as you like. In there. You can even have some of them, you know, coming out even further, like up here. And they don't actually have to be touching anything, right? They could be one right here. It's not really touching anything. It's just out there. Okay. Now you have a palette that has several different colors on it. It has some gold color, it has some red, and you can put any flowers or little petals or little things coming out of just this green area. For example, I'm going to come in here and just dab, and it's just going to give just kind of like, oh, there may be some little flowers back in there somewhere, and I'm just kind of dabbing some in. And it doesn't all have to be in the center. It could, some of it could be outside. It could come down like this, and these are just anywhere you would like to put them in, right? Just these little, they could be little buds maybe, or little yellow leaves. It's up to your imagination. You can do the same thing with the red, and you can put a few little red buds coming in anywhere you want. In here, this is all up to your imagination. If you go over the flowers that are there, it just looks like the flower is behind it. If you go just slightly behind the other one, you're pushing them back, right? It's up to you where you want to put them, and you can just put them out, as many or as few as you wish. You can bundle some of them up like this, coming out like so. You can have fun with it. This is your painting, so you can have all the fun you want to putting these in there. If you want to have more detail, you can always take a little bit of the light green or the dark green and just put it in the back, and that just makes your little flower look like it might be a little bud coming out. That's just a tiny, tiny bit of the green behind some of them. It just makes it look like it's a little budding flower coming out. Also on your leaves, if you want to add some more color to your leaves, you can always come in with the darker green, that same green that we had there, and you can just use some of it in there, and it just gives another little dimension to your leaf. Just a little more dimension. That leaf was still kind of wet, but it just gives some more dimension to your leaf. Some shadow in there and into your leafy area. So I can just kind of put some in like this. And that one was kind of wet too, so you'll see it as they dry how different they'll look, or if you put it in there while it's still wet. Just have fun and experiment with it until you get something that you like. You don't have to do it to all of them, just as long as you choose to do. Same way, you can put some darker ones out here if you want to do some darker leaves coming out, then that's fine too. I like that, kind of pulls my eye that way, and maybe want to balance it out over here and pull my eye this way. I think that's fun. You can always put some coming down as well, some buds or some leaves or anything you wish. I'll put some like this. I think that's kind of fun. Maybe there's a leaf just falling right here. And if you feel that leaf is, like I do, a little dark, I'll just add in some of this lighter green to it. Here's my fallen leaf. Just kind of fell off and just hanging out by the base. I hope to see yours. As always, don't forget to sign your name, and I hope to see some of your paintings. Post them on my Facebook group or right here underneath this video, and I hope you catch me on the next one.